As the schedule says, the bills will be heard today in committee. There's 4 bills. They'll be heard in 3 legislative committees. One of them is a public records request. Once those are done, I anticipate the Rules Committee will meet. We'll set a special order calendar to have the bills up on the floor tomorrow.
Speaker Sprowls, the broader bill setting the vaccine mandate exemptions gives the Department of Health a lot of authority to set rules, like frequency of testing and what constitutes a medically competent diagnosis for prior infection. Do you think it's right that the Department of Health should get that latitude, given that the Surgeon General is not confirmed by the Senate yet?
Sure, we've had Surgeon Generals who have not confirmed that's a process. The agency is still in effect. It's still its opportunity. It's within its regulatory framework. Certainly, it seemed to make more sense to send that to the Department of Health than having that discussion here in the legislature.
Talk to me about this money for studying whether we should have our own OSHA and the money for the Attorney General, please.
So 2 separate buckets, obviously. Under the OSHA bucket, the president and I came out very early on and said that we believe that OSHA, particularly with this heavy-handed mandate, is no longer consistent with Florida and Florida's values. We believe that we should look at whether or not there's a new opportunity to do our own regulatory framework under OSHA. Other states have done that. I think it was 20-some states who've pursued that in the past. We believe that this is now is the opportunity to do that. Obviously, we need to come up with that plan to submit that. So we need to put some money aside to do it. On the litigation money, thanks for asking, we put up $5 million aside for the Attorney General to make sure that we have all the money necessary to move as quickly as possible. A lot of the questions and the uncertainty around the questions of what's happening on vaccines and COVID have to do with the courts, the fact that we're involved in active litigation. We want to move that as quickly and as successfully as possible. So we want to make sure the Attorney General has all the resources she needs to do.
I wanted to ask you just the fact that you did not use the opportunity up on the dais there a moment ago to speak to the members. Does that hint at any kind of this is hesitancy, or this is not really your session, this is the session of Governor DeSantis?
That's a bizarre question, John, considering I showed up with the governor at a press conference 4 days ago to talk about the bill. Yeah. So I think that was kind of all the indication the members needed as to where I am. I've been very clear that I support the product that is on that is going to be in committee today. All of the bills I support and have advocated for.
Speaker, could you talk a little bit about the public records exemption and why you think that it is defensible and a good idea? First of all, there is some questions being raised as if the Attorney General is going to have the sole discretion to decide who should be fined and investigated. What check is there to be sure that this is not selective enforcement, if there is no way to check on these records?
Yeah, I think you guys would all agree as journalists, none of you would want your private medical information to be out there for everyone to see. So this is an opportunity for us to make sure we're protecting people's private information.
Speaker, on the bill that strips the Surgeon General of the power to mandate vaccines, are there any concerns about in the future about, what kind of threats might emerge?
Yeah, that's never been used. People have talked about that as a hypothetical, and I totally understand the hypothetical. It has never been used.
It's only been about 2 decades, in all fairness.
Yeah, 20 years is not an insignificant period of time, but I also think that we're living in a time now where, part of our argument has been, we don't believe that the federal government should be in a position to forcing vaccines. Let's be honest. If there was a legal mechanism by which the Biden administration could move about by just doing forced vaccinations and not having to contort themselves into this OSHA pretzel or the CMS pretzel, that's exactly what they would do. They can't find any legal way to do that. So that this is the avenue they've chosen. What we're saying is, if there's an avenue, even if it's theoretical and never been used here in Florida, that would allow a government to do that, then we should get rid of it.
If this OSHA rule is upheld by a court, what would you advise Florida businesses to follow? State law or federal rule and law?
Look, they're going to have to consult themselves on that, but let me be clear. I don't think it will be. I really don't. Obviously, the judge put the injunction in place, so right now the OSHA rule is not in effect, so I would tell business owners and have told business owners they are under no obligation to follow the OSHA rule because there is an injunction in place. I believe the Attorney General will be successful in the challenge.
I've talked to several Democrats here today saying that those in favor of the legislation in this special session are the vocal minority, and that most Floridians don't agree with any of what y'all are working on. I'm looking for your reaction.
Yeah, I don't know that to be true. People say that kind of thing all the time. Here's what I know. We don't govern by polls regardless, right? We govern based on what we think is right and wrong. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, if there's a 25-year-old pregnant woman who's working at a business and is told by her employer, against her will, that she either has to be vaccinated or she's going to be fired, do we think that is right, or do we think that is wrong? I think that is wrong. I think you're going to find a majority of the members of the Florida House, certainly the Republican conference, believe that it is wrong. I think most people in the public believe that is wrong. And I think, but for the actions of the Biden administration, we wouldn't really see this happening. We wouldn't see businesses pursuing this avenue. People would take a much more reasonable and nuanced approach to dealing with their employees who often they know their families, they know their situation. What has happened is this one-size-fits-all model that's being thrust upon Florida by the administration, and this is our opportunity to say we're not going to buy that.
What about the
Can I ask you to
CMS
follow up on the
rule?
public records exemption?
CMS first.
Yeah, so healthcare workers, it doesn't seem that you found a way to help them yet, who will be forced to be vaccinated soon.
Well, let's be clear. Under Florida's bill, which I believe is one of the most aggressive in the country, healthcare workers are covered. So I know some other states have taken this up and they've carved out healthcare workers. CMS is going to be litigation that I believe that we will pursue as a state, and I think other hospitals and private actors should pursue it as well. These are folks who are about to face massive healthcare shortages. Take Alan Levine, who's now in Tennessee, but as you all know, Alan used to former ACA secretary here in Florida. He had testified in front of Congress and talked about how he's going to lose significant amount of frontline nurses and staff as a result of the Biden CMS mandate. We run a real risk here in Florida that we're going to lose nurses, we're going to lose doctors at a time that nobody wants to lose doctors and nurses, and also at a time where we have a significant shortage. So I believe we should sue under CMS, but under our bill, if the CMS rule is to get an injunction or is to be struck down, our law will apply to healthcare providers.
There is some understanding that there is the public records exemption. You say that people don't want to have their private information disclosed. The First Amendment Foundation says that the way you've drafted it, though, is so overly broad that you're getting more than just that select exclusion.
Yeah, I think in fairness, that's always the reaction of the First Amendment Foundation.
How is your approach not a one-size-fits-all approach? I mean, the other side, you're saying if a business wants to look at the nuances, quote, unquote, of a business, and say they want to require their people to be vaccinated, then why are you not taking a one-size-fits-all approach in the other direction?
Yeah, if they wanted to do that, that is a one-size-fits-all. What we're saying is that there has to be options. We have to live in the real world, not a theoretical world. Can someone have a religious exemption? Should that be possible? Yes. Should someone have a medical exemption or testing? Or if they just got COVID last week, should they have to be vaccinated this week? Does that make sense? If they're pregnant, should they have to get vaccinated? If they're willing to submit to daily or weekly testing, should they have to get vaccinated? Those are the kinds of things that real people in the real world, absent a huge, one-sized, heavy hammer of government mandate from the federal government, would do. That is how they would treat their employees. That is how the employees would want to be treated. What we're saying in our bill is that's how it should be.
Last question.
Greg.
A lot of those exemptions you just mentioned are in the OSHA rules: medical, religious, if you get tested and that sort of thing. So you guys are just adding a couple more to a vaccine to get a letter.
I don't think they're exactly the same, Greg. So for example, our medical exemption is totally different than what the federal government's. They do offer a medical exemption, but they're not apples and oranges, apples and apples. They're apples and automobiles. Look, we believe that people should have options, and I believe that this is what businesses and employees would have done absent the federal government's unlawful, in my opinion, involvement.
I know that you have a sense of urgency, and you and other Republican leaders have a sense of urgency around this. The mandate is here. We need to do a special session right now. Where does the OSHA bill fit into this, considering it would take years to remove Florida from OSHA?
Look, it's a plan for the future, right? So there's no question that element is something that is going to take far more time than what we're here to do today. That is why we are taking a multifaceted approach, right? So on door number one, we are fighting the federal government in court. The Attorney General is doing a great job. We are going to support her financially by making sure she's got the resources in order to pursue the litigation. We're going to put the law in place so that hopefully, as I believe, the court will strike down and validate the OSHA requirement. And therefore, those businesses will fall under our law, will be the second one. And the third one would be, look, if this is the kind of style that we can expect from the federal government in the future as to weaponize OSHA to their own political benefit, then we should plan to get out of OSHA and set up our own regulatory framework.